Okay, completing the square. This is a method that we're going to use sometimes when we can't use just simple factoring to get our roots or the solutions that we're looking for. Now, this isn't something that you've done before, so use a little patience. Just take a deep breath. You can do this. Find the value of c that completes the square. So all you're doing is looking for this number that belongs right here. Here's what we need to remember. The value of a is the coefficient in front of the squared term. The value of b is the coefficient in front of x to the first power. And then here's c. That's going to be a number that doesn't have a variable with it. No x's, in other words, or m's or n's, just a number. We're looking for that number. Now, how do we get it? We get it by taking this value right here, and first we will cut it in half. So it's b divided by 2. Well, negative 38 divided by 2 equals negative 19. So that's the first step. Find b, cut it in half, and the second step, square it. So I'm going to write it like this: b divided by 2 squared equals, here's b divided by 2, we've already done that, so negative 19 squared. And this is how you should type it in the calculator: negative 19 squared in parentheses. We've talked about how the calculator before wants to make that a negative number. There we go. 361. So the answer to number 1 is positive 361. Now let's move on to number 3. We're going to do the same process. Here's b. It's negative 5 over 3. So the first step, cut it in half. Well, how do you do that if it's a fraction? Well, you do it, instead of dividing by 2, you multiply by 1/2. Your calculator will do this for you, but when you're multiplying fractions, it's the top times the top, the bottom times the bottom. 1 times 5 is negative 5. 2 times 3 is 6. That equals b over 2. Second step is b over 2 squared. So negative 5 over 6 in parentheses squared. So in our calculator again, here we go. I'm going to do alpha y equals, enter. That brings up my fraction. Negative 5, and on the bottom, 6, go over, push square. This will square the whole fraction. We'll see if it works. I didn't put it in parentheses. Math, enter, enter. 25 over 36. That's the answer. So what does that mean? That means now that I can complete this expression as x squared minus 5 over 3x plus 25 over 36. That's not the answer. We're not asked to write it out like this, only to find the value of c, but this part is coming. Number 5. Here's my b. It's negative 14. So the first step is b over 2 equals negative 14 divided by 2 equals negative 7. Second step, b divided by 2 squared. b divided by 2 is negative 7, so it's negative 7 squared. That equals positive 49. That's the answer. So if I had to, I could write this expression out now as p squared minus 14p plus 49. When you do this process, c is always going to be a positive number. It's going to be positive because you're having to square whatever b is, a half of b is, and anytime you square something, it turns out to be a positive number. So it will always be positive. Okay, here's a fraction again. Here's b, 22 over 13. So the first step, b over 2 equals 1/2. So when you have a fraction, use 1/2. When you have a whole number, just divide by 2. 1/2 times 22 over 13. Top times the top, bottom times the bottom, and this one will reduce to 11 over 13. b divided by 2 is 11 over 13. Second step, okay, b over 2 squared, and that's going to equal 11 over 13 squared equals 121 over 169. Let's see if that reduces. 121 divided by 169. Math, enter, enter. And it does not reduce. That's the answer. Alright, moving on. Number 9. b is negative 17. It's a whole number, so I'm just going to divide by 2. So b over 2 equals negative 17 over 2, and that doesn't reduce. That would be 8.5. You can write it as negative 8.5 if you want. Alright, second step. b over 2 squared equals negative 8.5 squared. Or you can leave it as a fraction and square the fraction. Alright, negative 8.5 squared. Negative 8.5 squared. $72.25 positive. 72 1/4, or you can change that to an improper fraction, or just leave it just like that. Here we go again. There's b. First step, b divided by 2 equals negative 34 divided by 2 equals negative 17. Second step, b divided by 2 squared. Negative 17 squared. Negative 17 squared. 289. Okay, now the last one. Back to fractions again. So instead of doing divide by 2, I'm going to do times 1/2. So b divided by 2 equals 1 over 2 times negative 11 over 12. 1 times negative 11, negative 11. 2 times 12, 24. Second step, b divided by 2 squared equals negative 11 over 24 squared. Okay. So negative 11 divided by 24 squared. Math, enter, enter. 121 over 576. All right. So why do we need to do this, and where is it headed? Let's go back and look at one that turned out pretty simple, like number 5. Okay, this is not what you're doing on this assignment, but this is where this is headed. If this happened to be p squared minus 14p plus whatever value c is equals 0. Now here's what I can do. I came up with this expression right here. And you'll notice how we ended up with plus 49 here, where the c was. And we actually added 49 to the right-hand side now of this equation. And if there's anything that we know in math, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So now we must add 49 to this side. All right, so let's start with that. So now we have p squared minus 14p plus 49 equals 49. Okay. Even if there had been a value over here like 5, we would have added 49 to it and written the answer down here. Now, completing the square allows us to do something very important. It allows us to factor this expression right here on the left-hand side. And the way that we're going to write this factor is we're going to take this letter, p, inside of parentheses. And there's a minus sign right here, so minus. And now we take half of that number right there, 7. With the square on the outside. And then that, if you FOIL it, will give you this right here, equals 49. That's the step that we're going to have to do on the next worksheet, where we're actually solving by completing the square. So that's where this is headed. I know you can do this. Look at these examples again. If you get confused, on this worksheet, all that you're doing is taking a number, cutting it in half, and then squaring it. That's all you do to get the answers required for this sheet.